Welcome to our 12-step Zoom workshop. My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic. Please join me in prayer for an open mind. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps in you, for an open mind and a new experience of myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Well, we're deep in one of the more important steps, the more challenging steps, the more transformational steps, as I've experienced it in the past several times. Step 4. The first time I did step 4, I did an autobiography. That was at the direction of my sponsor. He didn't know about the big book and the step process very much. And I certainly, being new, didn't know anything about anything. So I just followed his direction. And I did it with my willingness and with as much consciousness as I could muster at the time, 1984. As a result of doing all 12 steps in that first year of recovery on my own, because my sponsor didn't give me any direction. I didn't know that was the job of a sponsor because I was new. And I didn't change. Now, I didn't know that I didn't change because I wasn't drinking. So there was a lot of changes going on around me just because of that. I was thawing out. I was becoming more responsible. I certainly was becoming more conscious just because I wasn't drinking, not because I was doing anything, although I was attending meetings. I really saw them as group therapy, and I really loved the process. I had studied to be a psychologist and had done all the work to become a psychologist, including the training to do therapy. I never became a psychologist, which means I don't have a lot of amends to make to people that I would have otherwise injured, because I certainly wasn't capable of transmitting any mental health. But at 4 years of sobriety, a man that I heard in a meeting for 5 minutes. Meetings are really important for lots of reasons, not the least of which is that we hear people bear witness to the truth, that we hear people who have experienced a profound radical change. I mentioned that it's very unusual for me to take a nap in the mid-morning. This morning I happened to get up really early because I was awakened by a sense of a sort of a dream or an awareness that I had back from 1984 when I was getting sober. Those of you who have heard me share on the 3rd and 4th column on the resentment inventory know that I had a very difficult time with one of my coworkers, Bob. And it had come about because of my accumulated wreckage from all of the drinking, as well as at that time, I was passed over for that promotion that I had worked 20 years to achieve. It was heartbreaking. And yet, as I saw it in my morning meditation this morning, I had nothing else to do except to deal with this deep sadness and regret and sort of a negative shadow over me. I saw that it was part of the gift of this journey. Yes, I had gotten sober, but my ego hadn't really been confronted. And this was like a 4x4 on the brow of the nose. It really got my attention. And I can't speculate on what would have happened had I not had that experience, because I had the experience in 1984, 1988. And the point of my bringing it up is that we have these tools to deal with fear, to deal with sadness, to deal with regret, to deal with anger, to deal with loss, to deal with depression, to deal with grief. You guys have opened my mind up tremendously to the flexibility of using different words in the areas that Bill uses resentment and or fear. Sure, those are major disturbances in us, but as the 12 and 12 said, it's a spiritual axiom. When I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. So you say, wow, I'm beginning to really realize that my troubles, like the big book says, are really sourced in me. The big book literally says my troubles are of my own making. My self-centeredness is the root. And we have a tool, the 4th step, and we have a tool, the 10th step, which is a repetition of steps 4 through 9, enabling us to identify what the problem is and then have a formula, literally a formula, a very canned formula. Pray and talk and amend. And we're able to do that to redirect and reframe both our thoughts and our feelings. I text my 3 adult children every morning when I wake up just to let them know that I did. I'm at an age where that's problematic, of course, as you know. So I make sure that they know that I'm awake. But this morning it was longer. It was a deep revelation of this experience that I had this morning. I mean, it was so severe, it woke me up at 4:30 and I couldn't go back to sleep. That's one of those things. And I'm sharing this as just a personal experience to indicate that we never transcend our humanity. No matter how vital our spiritual life is and the knowledge that we have and the time that we have. In my meditation, I received the information that was very helpful that in my Monday, Tuesday workshop, I'm doing a very deep dive into the steps beginning with just now step 1. So we're looking at the physical aspect of the addiction, the doctor's opinion, which we unpacked yesterday and last night. And I'm confident that's correlated because I was reminiscing and reviewing that early part of my recovery. And when we review our lives that way and bringing it to the surface by talking about it, of course, it opens up other portals into our soul. So don't be surprised when you are working on anger that you're more angry. Don't be surprised that you're working on fear. You're more fearful. You are consciously taking the manhole cover off of the sewer, so to speak. And it bubbles up and it bubbles over in a way that we didn't anticipate. Unfortunately, I hope you're following the suggestion to use the set-aside prayer every morning and anytime you sit down to do the work. We're looking at the fear inventory now and we're unpacking it. It's very straightforward. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it in terms of the suggestions and the commentary, the participation about it. We will today. We'll do a little bit again next week. Today, I'd like to make comment on something that's outside of the big book, which I have mentioned. There's a worksheet in the Way of Life document on page 26. And it captures, of course, two of the components of the assignments from the big book on how to get to your fear. Name your fear and why do you have it, first column, second column, in terms of this worksheet. First time I've used that terminology here because the big book doesn't necessarily even refer to columns in the fear inventory because it just has those two questions. What fear? What is your fear and why do you have it? But because I have a background in human development and psychology, and I had the experience over time, especially through the workshop, the various workshops, of the turnaround of column 3 and column 4 in the resentment inventory, I thought it would be really helpful to have a turnaround with regard to the fear inventory. And this worksheet is designed to give us that sense of turnaround. So name your fear, yes. Why do you have it? Yes, you've done that. But then the third column is what behavior comes out of that fear? Very much like in the fourth column of the resentment inventory. And then for the turnaround sake, or at least an effort at trying that, what would be the opposite of the fear in terms of a virtue? If fear is the negative place, the source of negativity, what would be the alternative, diametrically different source of positive energy? I call it the virtue, coming from the Latin verb virtus, which means strength. What's the opposite of the fear? There's no right or wrong answer. There's just your particular answer at that particular time, dealing with that particular fear and why you have it. But then the real rubber meets the road when you ask the question, and what behavior would that virtue give me? So that now you have a contrast. Sure, you have a contrast in the name of the fear and the name of the virtue, but that's pretty theoretical. But now you have the name of the behavior that comes from the fear, and you've named the behavior that would come from the strength, from the virtue, from the courage. And then you have an opportunity to set up that vision of what it would look like, and then act as if, in the same way you did with the faith decision in steps 2 and 3. So I was able to take the nap after all that work this morning and get up and feel completely refreshed, as if I had had a good night's sleep, which was a real gift, and it really startled me that process worked that well. I wanted to share that because I think it's relevant to the work that we're doing. We never transcend our humanity. Bill says in the 10th step, watch for resentment and fear and selfishness and dishonesty when they crop up. He doesn't say if, when they crop up. Then we have these tools to deal with. And it's all about being then in alignment with the reality that we know. My life flourishes, but it's not without its speed bumps. And when you're looking at your past, you're going to naturally at some point have some level of grief or regret or sadness. That's all very healthy to process. The turnaround for me was a level of humility, seeing it as a gift, and then a level of gratitude, seeing how, as my spiritual director said, the Spirit writes straight with crooked lines. Because that was the beginning of a different orientation to my journey. I realized that the corporate ladder wasn't my ultimate priority. that in fact my recovery and helping others was in fact something I was enjoying much more, which was certainly correlated with my original, the way I started out at 17, studying to be a Catholic priest with the thought of maybe helping somebody. I left the monastery, because at 7 years of training, I realized that I would soon be ordained, and I actually didn't want to be a priest or do what priests do, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because my thought was I didn't want to teach and preach and help people. I was really aware that I had gone in there to have the Roman collar and the prestige that would come with that. Then I found out that wasn't what I wanted, and I didn't want to do the work. And here I am 50 years later, teaching, preaching, and helping people.
Really grateful to hear you two today speaking in, with a bit more, well, not a bit more, but I hear some vulnerability there around what your process this morning. And I also relate to that thing of when things still come up that, it's not that things should have been different. It's just that there are feelings associated with the way things worked out.
That's exactly nicely put. Nicely put. Yes, I agree with that. That's it. You're recognizing the feelings because there is that regret or sadness or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple for me around not having my own children, which is, related to the molestation situation that someone else shared about, that is, a similar pattern. But I do have adopted children, and they, my two sons, adopted sons, are very present in all my inventories, shall we say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
and it's not that I would ever not want to have them in my life. It's just sometimes when it's really hard, I think, it would have been different had I had my own children. But then I realized that had I had my own children, I have another whole set of issues in my inventory.
Yeah. And it's an interesting exploration, as I've mentioned perhaps many times, maybe too many times, but it still vibrates with me. Within the first 30 days after my wife of 52 years died, I did the woulda, coulda, shouldas, until I realized in my meditation that was a dark rabbit hole that was not healthy. In fact, the wee small voice wasn't very wee and small for me. It said, Herb, it makes no difference what it coulda, shoulda. She's dead. See, my voice talks to me the same way I talk to you, very direct. And it startled me. But it was just the stark truth. Even if it's true that I could have done something differently, which I don't believe for a minute, but even if it were true, it doesn't make any difference because I didn't, and she's dead. So now deal with the sadness and the loss, but not with the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the work in the fear inventory, you said you've seen a dominant one or two fears. What are those, if you'd like to share?
Yeah, so they were around my two adopted sons, and I have like three things. One is my sort of fear is that they're not going to be, they're not going to manage as adults, basically. They're not going to manage as adults, have healthy lives and healthy relationships.
Yeah.
But then I see my part in that fear, if you see what I mean. I don't trust them now, so that I don't trust their future. I drive them with my compensatory agenda. My fear is that I'm driving them with my compensatory agenda to feel good enough. I've got fear of not feeling good enough.
Yeah.
And I drive them. I sort of push them, and when are you going to do your work, and what about this, and this would be a really good revision plan, and all that stuff. So I'm driving. So I'm doing that and not allowing their own process, and also that my fear is that I'm so domineering in the family that I'm basically a dead weight on their enthusiasm and possibility and creativity. So I don't know whether that's a belief or there's a fear that that's the reality. These are my main three fears. I have other fears around intimacy and sexuality, and I have fears about being a misfit and never belonging and not being good enough and things like that. There's sort of more generic things, but these are very specific to my relationship.
So you'll spend some time unpacking it to try to see what is underneath each of the levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see how what I'm impressed with is the level of consciousness that you have about the variety and the nuance. It's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. That's one way of putting it.
Well, but if you don't know what the problem is, you can't deal with it.
Yeah.
If you're able to name it, at least you can get some traction in dealing with it.
Yeah. So I guess when you're saying unpack them, you mean following that process that you just described that's on the worksheet about,
well,
why do I have it? What behavior comes with that fear?
Sure. Maybe that one, but that's an aside. The real process that I've experienced with the unpacking of the fear is to answer the question, why do I have it? And then ask the question of that answer, what fear comes up when I answer it that way? What fear comes up when I answer that way? What fear comes up when I answer that way? So that I'm walking in a downward kind of investigation as to what's underneath to come to maybe the primary source of the fear.
Right.
Yeah. And you've done that verbally, intellectually, as we were just chatting about it, kind of speculating about the underlying causes. But I think you'll have a much better experience when you put that on paper.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing with us. That's right.
What I want to work on tonight is fear.
Yeah.
So I did 6 different fears, and I came to the same ending on all of them. And my step guide said to take it further, but we didn't have time to take it further. So I want to take it further. So I don't know if I use the sheet to do it or what.
Well, yes, pick one of those and then read it and unpack it, and let's see where that goes. All right.
Okay. So I already did 6, and all of them led to the same fear.
But we don't know what you did.
Oh, okay. I'm telling you, I did 6 of them already.
No, I understand that. What is it that you want help with?
My fear of being alone. All 6 of them, the ending was I fear of being alone. So I want to, where can I go with that? I want to take it somewhere. I want to get better.
Well, okay. All right. So what fear comes up when you see yourself alone? Now, describe the circumstance in which you're alone.
Okay, let's see. What can I do? Confrontation with people. I'm afraid I won't be able to defend myself. I'm afraid of losing the argument. I'm afraid of losing my dignity. I'm afraid that people won't like me, and then I'll be alone. I'm afraid of being by myself. I don't want to be bored. I won't have a reason to go on with life. I'll be alone.
All right. And what fear comes up when you think about you being alone, and sort of describe the circumstances? Are you alone because you don't have any partner or family, or are you just alone at home for a weekend, or are you alone in a cabin in North Dakota, or what's the circumstance?
Okay, so I have family and I have children, but she said to take it after that. So so children are gone, family's gone. And so I just see myself in a room by myself, having dementia, and I don't know what's going on anyway. So
Dementia, you won't know you're alone.
exactly. So what's the big deal?
So you won't even know you're suffering. So yeah. So let's keep that component out of it.
All right.
You're at home somehow, and for some reason you've been cut off from family and friends, and you are alone
Correct.
by yourself. What fear comes up when you see that circumstance?
Is sadness a fear?
That well, don't block anything. Don't filter it. So that okay. So
I'm sad.
I'll be sad.
I'm lonely. I'm sad.
I'll be sad and lonely. And what fear comes up when can you feel it? Sadness and loneliness. What fear comes up when you see that?
Yeah, I feel it in my chest.
Yeah.
What fear comes up? Just being alone. I'm afraid I'll go to my addiction of overeating.
Okay. Yeah, it's a way to entertain yourself. And so what fear comes up if in fact you relapse and you say, screw it, there's no reason for me to even be concerned about addiction. I'm just going to let myself deteriorate in addiction. What fear comes up?
I'll be 300 pounds again.
And what fear comes up if you're 300 pounds, nobody's going to be observing you.
I will probably die at 300 pounds.
All right. Do you have a fear of death?
No,
Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you die or not.
correct.
Okay, so that's not a fear of being 300 pounds.
A fear of the complications that come with being 300 pounds. I'm afraid of that.
Me too. I don't mind dying. I'm in no hurry, but I don't want the suffering between now and then. Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's assume that you have some deterioration in your health, or you're observing even deterioration in your mental health, and you know it's going to be inevitably completely disabling and death over a long period of time of inconvenience. What fear comes up?
I'm pretty damn annoyed.
Well, yeah, all right. Well, you could do a resentment inventory on that, but yeah. All right. So let's try something different then. Let's go to the worksheet.
Okay, I'm there.
All right. And so we've done the first two columns. What behavior comes up when you don't feel safe, that you feel that you're being wrong, or you're being seen as wrong, and you won't be accepted, and you're bored and you're sad, and you go back to your addiction and you're 300 pounds. Those are the notes I made. What behavior is going to be the dominant behavior there?
Eating and shopping.
Or you're going to go outside to
No.
shop? Or
Amazon.
are you doing it online? Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah. All right. All right. All right.
And I'll see the postman. So that'll be good.
All right. So you'll have behavior that's a distraction. Let's say that.
That's right.
So given that circumstance, what would be the opposite of the fear of being alone?
Sociable.
Yeah. I would enjoy social contact.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. All right. And then what behavior would go along with that?
Oh, my charming personality would come out. I love people.
What's the behavior? Yeah, you're describing it nice about the kind of the attitude, but what about the behavior? What behavior would you actually do?
I would be happy.
No, that's a emotion.
Okay. Behavior is doing something, is an action word. Is behavior an action word?
Yeah.
I would definitely have a party and invite people over.
Ah, okay. All right.
And yeah.
Yeah. You see, it's interesting because my reaction was, because I'm following with you, I would go out someplace to be with people. but I'm a hermit. I love my solitude. I wouldn't invite people to my house. You're a party girl, see? You want people to come to your house. Oh, that's all right. Um, so what's your sense of what we just did? I don't have any sense of it. Because I'm not sure where to take it. So what's yours?
Well, after doing this and praying, I'm not really afraid of being alone because I have God. Deep down, when it comes to the very end of it all, wherever I am, I have God wherever I go.
So the turnaround would be I'm alone, but I have an opportunity to foster my relationship with higher power. Also, I'm alone and I have the ability to invite people in or to go out. I heard somebody once say, if you're bored, you're boring. And I don't believe that about you. All right. No, just the way you interact. You have an energy about yourself. So my sense is that somewhere in here, some part of that was the problem. My ears always perk up when I hear I won't be accepted by others and I have a fear of being wrong, which means that you're getting some validation from people.
Yeah, I have that. I have that codependent tendency.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's just something to see as the underpinning of a fear of being alone, because how do you get that sense of personal worth and validation?
I gotcha. I hear you.
But then you see, oh, well, that's not healthy.
Mhm.
I really don't need it. I'm quite sufficiently self-contained, and I can choose companions or activities so that I'm not bored. And then also, maybe if I'm bored, I'm thinking too much about myself.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
Yeah, okay, this would be, see, the ultimate turnaround in the program, the dynamic of the total step process is turning from self-centeredness to other-centeredness. Now, you captured the other-centeredness with the capital O, but you were not quite as spontaneous about capturing the social part, other than saying you're a social person, and that would be the antidote. Then it's about your initiative. So you can be alone or with people without ever being lonely, unless, in fact, you're needing people to validate yourself. And then that's probably, from my standpoint, a bottomless pit.
I like that. That's good. I have something to look at. That's great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Well, no, thanks, because I've never taken it that way. I was good. I'm glad it helped. All right.
I started one call that was being taken advantage of, my fear of being taken advantage of by others. And that I worked on this with my step guide as an introduction. And what I came up with him was being taken advantage. I fear that I'm a sucker, and I feel being shown up, and I have to face my own stupidity, I think, and I have that fear because I'm afraid it'll destroy my self-image. And then the fear is that I'm nothing. And then it goes back to people won't like me. And I'm alone. And with him, he said, well, I'm in emotional pain. And that's where we got.
I don't understand that. What does that mean?
I didn't. I don't. I don't either. I mean,
Okay.
if I'm alone, I'm in emotional pain, and I was not happy with that.
Well, I
It didn't
mean,
satisfy him.
it was his response, and it didn't resonate with you, so you don't have to accept it.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
it sounds to me. Well, how does it sound to you? Everything that you've just said seems to have a consistency to it.
Yeah.
What's the what holds it all, that spider web all together?
Well, the self-centeredness. I mean, I think.
Well,
Lack of-
in a way,
that-
that's too glib, though. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm. What holds it all together? This. Well, the fear of being alone.
Yeah, but why? What's underneath the fear of being alone? If you're alone with yourself, what fear comes up?
That I can't. That I have relying solely on myself. It's that self-reliance piece that you were
All
talking.
right, I agree. No, Bill had a tremendous insight to it. That is glib, by the way, from my standpoint.
Right.
It's correct, but it's just too easy. Sure,
Yeah.
but what does it mean to you? In other words, what comes up in fear when you think of yourself as needing to connect to self-reliance and knowing that you can't? What's the fear that comes up? Why can't you rely on yourself?
Because I'm not
Yeah,
worthy. I'm not worthy. Yeah.
I'm not enough.
I'm not enough.
For me, that phrase was what held the entire cobweb together.
Yeah.
A fear of being alone, a sense of not being okay, a sense of needing
Right.
others'
No,
approval.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's that.
yeah, yeah.
It's that not wanting to be with just myself.
Well, of course, because you're not enough.
I'm not enough. Yeah. I can't
Right.
do it.
Right. I'm not
I need-
smart
I need
enough.
you. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you said all of those things that sort of painted the cobweb. I've never used that analogy before, but I was getting it as you were talking and looking at all of the different strings on you that all centered down into, I have this feeling I'm not enough. And one of the acronyms that I've heard in the rooms, we're real cute with acronyms, false evidence appearing real.
Oh, right. Yes.
False evidence appearing real, fear. But it's obviously not true. It's a feeling. It's just not based on fact. And I don't know whether that helps you to kind of like go it's called a reality check. Oh, I have this feeling. Oh, I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I'll bet you a therapist could bring you right back to a relationship in your family of origin where you were conditioned to believe that or to feel that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And now and you've done a lot of work in your life to overcome that. All right. But it didn't change the feelings.
No. Nor has the work I've done since I retired.
Yes. But maybe this work can. So take a look at that worksheet in the Way of Life document. What would be the opposite of this feeling I'm not enough? That sense of insecurity and inadequacy. What would be the opposite, the virtue that would come that would be the opposite?
Humility somehow
Interesting.
feels right to me.
Interesting. All right. I wouldn't have chosen that word, but I can see that would be a wonderful word. What does it mean to you?
It means accepting that in order to be enough, I don't have to be the Superman that I think
Wow.
I have to be.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, from my standpoint, that's a wonderful insight. Because you're not enough in the feeling sense because you're measuring yourself against Superman. Yeah. So what did Bill say in the beginning of the third step? We have to quit what? Playing God, right?
Playing God, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So humility, I think you tapped right into it. Humility, healthy humility, that is that sense of
Yes.
perspective. I'm a human being and I have some talents. I'm not perfect. And they're never going to write books about me or create a film about me. I'm not Clarence Darrow or whatever his name was, right? So you did know how to get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you have to figure out what does it mean and how does that translate into behavior?
Mm.
And pray for guidance in that. That's what Bill talks about in the fear, as he does in each of the other areas. We need guidance, like he said in step 11, knowledge of God's will for us and power to carry it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the faith comes in.
And yeah. Well, that's the challenging question. What do I actually believe? Really? I mean, I had that meditation myself this morning. I mean, I got lots of great words and I know how to put them in wonderful phrases. And I was sitting there saying, do you believe any of this shit, Herb?
Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say that.
I'm sorry to be so kind of like gross. I'm not normally using things like that, but it seemed appropriate because I needed to like put it on the level playing field, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's very helpful.
Yeah. As I've said so many times, we never transcend humanity, and I was in my home group meeting last night and they asked me to share and I got in touch with, I'm really happy that I've become a decent human being, flesh and blood. I never was that and it was never my goal. I wanted to be the Superman, the dominant person. And now I can just be one of many. I've got talent. You've got talent. It's wonderful to recognize it. That's true. That's true humility. Yeah.
Then I want more and more and more. Yeah.
Well, of course. Well, okay. All right. Now, see, that's that hunger thing. I don't have that anymore. All right. I used to have it, and it's a very delicate trigger that can get tripped very easily.
Right.
You take me for a walk in Beverly Hills and I start lusting after mansions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No. Thank you so much.
Good conversation. I hope it was helpful. It was helpful to me. I hope it was helpful to you. All right.
It was definitely helpful to me. Thank you.
Right, good. Thank you.
I've been working on going through my fears. And I have lots of fears, but I picked 3 major ones. And I've, if I may, I put them on a spreadsheet, so I'm going to be reading them off a spreadsheet.
All right. Well, read one of them.
Okay. One that we talked before was I have a fear of trusting other people. And I got the fear because when I relied on the people that were my parents or my surrogate parents, I always felt they never were there for me. So that's where I got the fear.
Yeah. So people will let me down.
Yes, that is it. And when I go is why I know why I believe it, but when I go and so what, the next thing that came up for me was I will let myself down. If I trust other people, I will be let down. If I trust people, I will be hurt and rejected. If I let people in, I will be hurt and rejected. And what comes through it is that I don't trust. If I go deep enough, I feel that I will not. I will find that I am not good enough, that I do not enough, that I am myself not worthy of trusting myself. And next I wrote, I do not trust because I don't want to be disappointed. It's defense mechanism in me. I am afraid that if I trust, I will be rejected. And somebody said is my feeling of control, that if I if I face my fear, I really don't know. I'm totally lost, to be honest.
You're saying you're lost to an answer to that question if you
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. You indicated that there were three. Did all three of them unpack in a similar way?
Yes, they all. I saw a clear for me because my three ones was fear of financial insecurity and fear of abandonment.
All right. And the bottom line on those two are what?
The bottom line, the fear for abandonment was that if I go deep enough, I will find out that I am worthless, that nobody wants me.
All right. And so they really are very correlated. I am not enough.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What do you do with that?
That is the question I'm asking you. I mean, in my meditation in the morning, I pray that I will, and you said this is just shortcut, it's not the journey. I always pray that I would feel I am enough, I do enough, I am enough. Dear God, help me get to that point where I feel it.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm not at that point in my journey.
Yeah.
When things go wrong, my first question is, okay, how did you screw it up, girl? And
well, I mean, that might be a question. If it went wrong, the outcome wasn't what I anticipated. So what in me didn't think correctly, didn't act correctly, didn't feel correctly in terms of the anticipated outcome? Was I unrealistic? Was I naive? Did I not work long enough? Did I not work hard enough? Did I not work smart enough? These are all healthy questions. Why not? If you don't get the outcomes that you want, you have to challenge it.
I do challenge it on two things. One, is it unrealistic? And
Yes.
then the second thing is, as a child, whenever I did something, my parents would say, if you really tried hard enough, you would have succeeded. So when I try something and I do what I think is the best of my ability and it fails, my mind goes back to, well, if you would have said it in these words, if you would have talked to this person, you would have gotten the result that you want. And then I say, hey, wait a second. You can't control the result. You're not God. Let go. And then I go back to, well, God wants you to do your part in it. You didn't do your part in it correctly. So I go into this little hamster wheel of it's unrealistic, it's up to God. And if I had done my share, I would have had a different results. I don't know if any of this makes sense.
Well, it makes total sense from my standpoint. It's a wonderful evaluation of what the possibilities are. It sounds a little bit, however, that you're driven by perfectionism.
Yes.
It sounds a little bit that you have been conditioned a little bit by some family of origin phrases and words, and you're still resonating with those, which is an unhealthy response on your part. But at this point, you're surfacing it, you're bringing it so that you can name it, and now you have a responsibility to deal with it in terms of, is it true, or is it just an old idea? And I'm going to act differently than I feel, and I'm going to pray, like you said.
Mhm.
I want to be healthy. I want to be whole.
Yes.
Yeah. And help me see the truth. Sure.
Uh-huh.
So,
Because
go ahead.
the reason I mentioned trust is we talked a while back ago. You won't remember it maybe, but I remember it like it was like I was hit by a 2x4 when you told me I did not trust God.
Yeah.
You hit me really hard because it resonated.
Right.
And then I realized I didn't trust anyone. So that was my biggest fear. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
And right now I am really working on how I can start trusting again. And
Yeah.
I really don't know, to be honest.
It's a huge issue, and it's not resolved by a formula. At one point in my amends and etc. with my wife back in the day, the very first time I made legitimate amends, 1989, when we were then having a reasonable conversation, because we had established a level where we could have that at that point, I said, so when will you trust me again? And she said, trust is never given, Herb, it's earned. I said, oh, so how do I earn it? And she said, with consistent behavior. We never had another conversation about it again for years, about 5 years. And one time we were probably cooking dinner, preparing, cooperating, making a nice dinner for our family. And she looked over at me 5 years later and said, I trust you today, Herb. Because I had been consistent in my behavior. So go incrementally in terms of trusting. Trust is not given, it's earned. And start with challenging yourself, as you said, the 2x4, 4x4, trusting God. What does that mean? Look back over your shoulder and take a look at what your journey has been, certainly in recovery. Mm-hmm. And maybe there'll be some evidence that you can begin experimenting with incremental trust of the universe, of the goodness of people. Mm-hmm. But incrementally, you don't jump into that like a light switch, right?
No, I do know that when I feel out of balance, it's usually with the universe. And when I'm going through really rough times, I always now turn it over to my higher power, saying, I know I'm out of alignment with you. Please guide me back to the alignment. And so far, he, she, or it has.
Yeah, whatever it is. And, I'm so glad that you've embraced that word, because for me, it is right at the heart of the matter, alignment. When I'm disturbed by anything, I believe it's because I'm out of alignment with everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'd like to go over a couple of the fears that I have, because I don't understand what unpacking means really.
Sure.
And how to do that. So I guess two of my really big fears that I'm pretty sure all my fears are connected, but two of the big ones are that I will never be okay in my own skin, like that feeling.
Right.
And then the other one is that I will never be able to maintain a consistent recovery.
Yes.
In my idea of what recovery means.
Sure. And so what did you do with that first one? Did you do any quote, unpacking?
Like, so I don't understand still what that means. So like, why do I have the fear?
Yes. What did you write when you answered that question?
So I haven't written anything yet, but when I think about why I have this fear is because when I get to a place, as far as my own skin, when I get to a place of like the ultimate recovery, when I feel the best I've ever felt. I've been abstinent. I feel the happiest I've ever felt. Like there's an outward appearance that projects to the outside, and then there's an inward feeling, and there's a disconnect between the two things. And that's where I feel like I'll never be able to match my insides with my outsides, like, and be okay in my own skin. And so why I have that is because I've never felt alignment.
All right, so let's ask it in a very different way. So start again and tell me what your fear is.
That I will never truly be okay in my own skin.
Rather than ask the question, what do I think about that or why? Ask the question, what fear comes up when I say that? So say it again and then put your hand on your heart or your stomach as a feeling to remind you that's where I want you to come from. So say what your fear is and why you have it.
So I will never be okay in my own skin. And the reason why I have this fear
What fear? Go ahead. What fear comes up?
I think it's the same as what other people talk about, like that I'll never be worthy, like I'm damaged.
Yeah. Let's assume that you are. Let's assume that it's true. You're damaged. What fear comes up when you accept that? I'm damaged.
Yeah.
What fear comes up? Not in your head. Hold your hand there. Really feel it in your feelings. What fear comes? Fear is a feeling, not a thought.
That I just need to disappear.
Well, what if you disappeared? What fear comes up?
I don't know.
Nobody will miss me. It'll make no difference to anybody.
Yeah.
So I have a fear I don't make a difference.
My toes are curling as you're saying it. So yeah, that's it. I won't matter.
Yeah. And what fear comes up when you say I don't and won't matter?
It's pointless. Like it reminds me of the big book chapter to the agnostics about we're a whirling ball of nothing.
Yeah.
It all means nothing.
Yeah.
And that's how it feels. Like that is exactly tied to that same feeling of it just means nothing. Like it's all fake. Nothing is real.
Yeah.
And it just means nothing. And it can't be that way, Like,
well, what if it is? What if it is? What if it all means nothing? What fear comes up?
I just don't understand. Like if it all means nothing, I don't matter. Like none of this matters. Like I don't know.
All right.
It's then it gets into panic. I start to feel very panicky, like,
Well, that's fear. Yeah. What if in fact I'm going to live a life of whirling panic at all times? What fear comes up? See, the key question is to continue asking, what fear does that generate? What fear does that generate? What fear does that generate? So what if life has no meaning? What if I will never understand the meaning of life or mine? What fear comes up?
It just goes blank, or like it
Yeah.
just,
And that's when you stop. When it goes blank or it becomes circular, like it began to be in your own words, it began circular.
yeah,
Or you come to an answer, you stop. Those are the three, at least, experiences that I have. You hit a wall, a blankness,
yeah.
uh, you have an answer, or it goes in circles. Then you just go on to the next fear. So, what was the other fear that you had? You said, I think there were two.
That I will never have consistent recovery.
Okay, and you didn't write about that. So, let's do something here, just like we did. So, what if it's true? What feeling comes up when you embrace the inevitability, the truth that you will not ever have consistent recovery?
That I will be miserable because that's how I feel when
Yeah.
I'm not in recovery.
Yeah. What if it's true that you will spend the rest of your life on a daily basis in conscious misery? What fear comes up?
Fear that comes up is that that I will show my daughter that um, that I will prove to my daughter that it's not worth life, and that I will never be I just will give her an example of a legacy of that life isn't worthy. And I just never ever would want that for her. Ever.
Yeah. No, you tapped into a very deep vein of fear for you, and I'm not going to pursue it, although you can. All right, you can pursue that. There's going to be questions about that, then you can even take it a little bit deeper. Okay, but so what I and thank you for your vulnerability and your courage in standing and doing this here just spontaneously. And I wanted it to be a model for people to, for themselves to work through, or when they're working with somebody as a sponsee or a helper, that they can just be patient to help them ask the questions again. There's not a right answer.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to a place that I never would have expected or suspected, and maybe you didn't either. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Herb.
Yeah. And the point of it is to get underneath what our fears are and then to realize what the big book says. I mean, Bill knocks it out in one line. Self-reliance fails us.
Yeah.
And so then we have the opportunity to pray for the removal of the fear and maybe even examine, as we did earlier, so what do we really believe about power or the universe or even about myself? What do I really believe about my capabilities and my innate goodness and my innate competency? What do I really believe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
And
stuff
then
to figure out.
and then to create a turnaround for yourself
Yeah.
that's healthy. Not we're not talking about fantasy here or Pollyanna's pixie dust. We're talking about the real consciousness of choosing how and who we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Herb.
About it said self-reliance failed us.
Yes.
Okay, so because I have that consistent recovery issue. And then what came out for me was ask for help. And then what came out of the fear of ask for help, it isn't okay to ask for help.
Uh,
Is it okay to ask for help? And I'm like, wow. And then you said, what do I really believe? I just wanted to say that was pretty powerful. Thank you.
No, and there's so many ways that even that could develop into more exploration, isn't there? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a wonderful share. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. Is it okay to ask for help? And if I do, is there help available?
Yeah.
Is anybody home? And yeah, yeah. Does anybody care? Does anything care? Yeah, yeah.
I just noticed though, doing this the first time I've ever understood, I don't understand, this is all new, doing this fear thing, is we get to the bottom, and it seems like it's kind of negative. And I'm like, so where's the help in digging deeper?
Tell me about what you're perceiving as negative.
Well, when you get to the bottom, it seems like, is life worth it? All this work I do, is life worth it?
Yeah, but that's a whole other unpacking stream that would probably take 5 or 10 minutes to do the same kind of thing, because that's just another major vein of fear. What's underneath that? And so, yeah, I don't know whether it's negative. I wouldn't think so in terms of the ultimate answer, as Bill suggests. Oh, I have fear because I don't trust myself. I have fear because I don't trust the universe. I have fear because I don't trust God. Those are not negative statements. Those are observations of how I'm perceiving, which leads me to the answer, oh, am I trustworthy? Is the universe trustworthy? Is there God, and is God trustworthy? So I'm then brought to some challenges about my perspective on reality. So that's why I like the worksheet that I suggested, from the Way of Life document, because it brings us to a turnaround. And so you're saying it brings us to a question, and it sounds negative, but the question that I bring it to is, so now what? What do I do now? And Bill says we pray. That's nice. But I like to also, as a human being, come up with some practical, mechanical suggestions for what we can do to have that turnaround, where we have a vision of a thought or a feeling and the behavior that goes with it, so that we can, in fact, go from the negative, the black at the bottom, and begin to have some light and some climbing the staircase back up to having the trust that is the antidote to fear. But once again, as I said earlier, that's a process, not an event. It's not I don't make a decision to trust and then, oh yeah, now I trust. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, but we do it incrementally. But yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so
I'm
then,
so glad that you brought it up, because I think that gives us a nice turnaround in itself in terms of the conversation that we've had all morning.
right, and the actual, okay, what's the practical way? Well, yeah, I start praying, but then it's also kind of like when you do step 6 and 7 and you have your character defect and you don't want to live in the negative part of the character defect. Well, how can God help me change? What can I do to change this negative into a positive?
Right, right.
Okay, I'm grasping. It takes a while.
Well, you brought it up, and that's really where the major turnaround takes place, is in 6 and 7, and we'll talk about that in more detail. But the ingredients, as I've experienced 6 and 7, is not just prayer.
Right.
It's prayer because I'm powerless, but it's accountability because I'm human.
Right.
I need to pray, yes, because I need the power. I need a connection with power. But because I'm human, I also need a partner as a companion for accountability. because my mind and my heart will lie to me. And I need somebody as a mirror who will tell me the truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did about 4 fears on. So what worked for me was asking the question, okay, what am I scared will happen next? And then what am I scared will happen next? And they all come out in the end the same thing, where I'm back in the food, lonely, fat, obese, and wanting to die. And what my buddy pointed out was how I'm still seeing food as a solution towards the end, you know. So anyway, I wouldn't mind going through one of them with you if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So my fear is that my son, Jordan, who's 8 years old, is a food addict just like me. So why do I have the fear? Because I see the way he eats, thinks, acts, and dreams about food just like I did when I was his age. What am I scared of? I'm scared that I'm not helping him enough because I let him eat junk food, especially flour and sugar. Then I'm scared that he will get fat or fatter. Then I'm scared that the kids will tease him. Then I'm scared that I will start controlling his food, remove all flour and sugar, and try and put him on the FA food plan. Then I'm scared that he will get deprived and feel different. Then I'm scared that he will hate me for not helping him earlier on or for trying to control him. I'm scared that I will argue with my husband because we'll have different opinions, solutions to this problem. I'm scared that my husband will blame me for Jordan being a food addict. Then I'm scared that I'll blame myself, hate myself. I'm scared that I'll beat myself up for not knowing how to help him early on and for not doing the right thing. Then I'm scared that he'll be fat, miserable, battle with food and weight just like me all his life. Then I'm scared that I won't cope because I can't see him in pain. Again, I'll hate myself for having kids, knowing that there is a chance they can become food addicts as they have the gene, or I have the gene. I'm scared I will pick up the food because I won't be able to cope with the intense feelings. I'm scared that I will binge, won't be able to get back on track with my abstinence. Then I'm scared that my husband and I will argue more, that my husband will leave me. Kids will go with my husband because I'm not stable and I can't help Jordan. I'm scared that the kids, I'll affect the kids because they'll be without a mother. Then I'll hate myself more. So it sort of starts to go back in circles. I'll hate myself more. I'll eat more. I'll end up obese, fat, alone. Then I'm scared that I won't want to get out of bed. Then I'm scared that I'll live long being bedbound, fat, smelly, suicidal. Then I'm scared that I want to kill myself. And I'm scared that I'll have to face each day feeling miserable, depressed, and sorry for myself. Then the fear is I'll cause more stress to my parents because it'll be hard for them to see me like that. They will die early because of me. Again, I'll hate myself, be alone, and I'll live a miserable, depressed life.
All right. So you said you'd unpack several and they pretty much had the same kind of pattern, right? Yeah.
Well, towards the end, it was the same pattern. I'm in the food.
Right.
Then I hate myself. Then I become obese. Then I have to, when my parents see me, and just all the same.
Yeah. So I'm not even sure what question to ask, but what is your overall experience with doing sort of more than the one then in terms of the fear?
Well, I think you said trying to get to the source of what is the deep fear underneath it all. It's interesting how the fear of being alone leads to me being scared of, of my son being a food addict. I couldn't sort of put those two together, and I'm a bit confused thinking, I said to my buddy, well, now what? Like I liked it yesterday how people asked, what do we do with this? I mean, do I pray for the fear to be removed? What's the purpose of unpacking this fear? I guess my question will be to you.
Certainly to understand the depth of your fear and maybe the source of your fear. You saw the depth of it. What do you think what do you speculate is the source of the fear?
Well, it's because of the source is myself, because I see my son just like me. Is that right? So
Well, yeah, but that's that you made that very clear. But so what's the source of your fear?
Being alone.
What's the
No.
source of that fear? Do you recall what the big book says?
No.
Okay, you might want to reread page 68. It says self-reliance is the source of the fear. Now, I don't want it to be that glib so that we just automatically say that, ba, 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 ba. No, it's about seeing what you've seen in terms of the level of the detail and then going, wow, do I trust God or don't I? Do I trust the program or don't I? Is there a power that I really do believe in or don't I? So those would be some challenges. And then one of the suggestions I'll make to you and anybody else who wants to answer that question, what do I do now? That's the reason I put the worksheet in the Way of Life document, because I believe it helps us to have a turnaround. The worksheet says, so what's my fear and why do I have it? What behavior is connected to that? And you already listed some of the behaviors that come out of it. And then what would it look like if you didn't have the fear? What would be the courage that you would have? What would be the behavior that would go with that? Do you have, just spontaneously, do you have any sort of response to those general questions?
Yeah. I'd be more relaxed around it, and I wouldn't be so focused on what he's eating and not eating. I'd just let him make his own decisions and leave it up to.
How old is he?
He's 8 years old.
No, he does. He's not capable. He's a little animal. You need to train him. No, I mean, let's be real. You need to train him. You're the parent. You don't let him make his own decisions because he's going to go for cotton candy. All right. So the dominant thing that came out to me as you were reading it is you need some information. You need some information on parenting with regard to a child and how do you help them develop good habits. And so I don't know whether that's a medical doctor, a pediatrician, a nutritionist, a therapist, because you clearly have the genes in your family because you're there, right? And then, and so then, is your husband in a program?
No.
All right. Is he supportive of your program?
Yes.
Is he interested in knowing more about the problem and that it's genetic and that it's in his children and that he might need to deal with it?
No, he thinks there's nothing wrong with Jordan's eating. It's just he thinks that's how he was as a kid and he'll be fine when he gets older.
And that may be true. And that may be true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It may be true, but again, that's where you might need some information. That's
what I've been praying about. Is this just what kids, because or is it just my fear? That's what I've been really praying for God to show me, because we try to incorporate healthy eating, and I already know with FA, but with an 8-year-old, he's not going to eat 6 ounces of vegetables, for example. It's just not practical. It's I need to pray a lot more around it because my husband has a different view. Yeah.
Well, it's about communication and it's about information. So yeah, and that's where the turnaround worksheet might be helpful because it might lead you to think about, so what are the practical solutions? What are the behaviors that I can do? I can attempt to have better communication with my husband. I can certainly have better parenting skills with my child.
Yeah.
We took our 2 or 3-year-old, I forget actually, a son, because he had such energy. We thought there might be something wrong because the energy was always mischievous, of course. And after the therapist met with him and then met with us, he said, you need to stop being so negative with him. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. No, you need to be very positive with him. And it's just like something we weren't even conscious of. We don't touch that, don't do that, don't do this. And of course, it's a much better environment when you have a more positive attitude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as you know, I'm a big believer in information because we don't have, I don't know what your parents were like, but I sure didn't get much modeling from my parents.
Oh gosh, Herb, I never had a vegetable until I came into FA, which I was 27. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So there you go. Anyway.
yeah, okay.
And so, and you might even want to challenge yourself on the, here I'm trying to fix you now, of course, because that's my job. You might want to challenge yourself on the word fear. Is it fear or is it just like concern? Concern is a good thing.
Yeah, I am concerned, very.
Yeah. And then challenge it where it doesn't create stress in you. It creates an invitation and opportunity for you to come to some type of positive solution for both yourself in terms of being more calm, but also with regard to your son or other children that you might have.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Raising kids is tough, and I can't even imagine today with the challenges and the technology that
Yes.
I watch my grandkids and I have to really bite my tongue a lot, because it seems that they're way too, it's too easy to put them into their iPads and their iPhones and all of the rest of that as a babysitter because it's the easier, softer way. And these kids really get addicted to it. Yeah.
I know. That's another fear of mine with my older son. So, yeah, don't.
Yeah. Well, it's such a pandemic problem here in the United States. We actually have now treatment centers for adolescent technology addiction.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a
Doesn't
legitimate
surprise me.
concern.
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. It is definitely. So, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
And I put name my fear, and I put never. Well, I put never getting abstinence, or how about never keeping abstinence?
All right.
Fear.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And why do I have it? Because I have never. Okay. So because I have never entirely given up the food. Do I believe I have a disease? That's what I wrote.
All right.
Because, and the reason why I write that really quick is I came in 30 years as an active bulimic and an active alcoholic, and I no longer binge and purge, and I no longer drink, but I like to eat when I want to eat, and I want to do what I want to do. Okay.
And what's wrong with that?
That's not working the program.
Well, do you need to work the program then if you can, in fact, eat what you want when you want?
Say that again.
Is that a problem? When you said, I want to eat when I want and what I want, is that a problem?
Yeah, it is.
What's the problem?
Well, because if I choose to say eat something sugar-free, and sugar is for me a drug, then once I ingest the sugar, I want more and more and more.
Oh, so it is a problem.
It is a problem.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't clear what you were
Oh.
saying. You indicated that you didn't have I heard you didn't have a problem with it now that you're a recovered alcoholic and a recovered food person. And so, but you're saying that although I'm not sure. Let's see.
Well, I don't purge anymore, but I still have the compulsion to eat.
Okay, so then what is that for you?
The compulsion to eat is the part where I want what I want when I want it. So I got off the phone with my
But
sponsor.
that doesn't work for you, you're saying?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, all right. So then you do have an addiction.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's what I wasn't clear on, what you were saying.
Yeah.
Because you were, yeah, so you were making distinctions that I'm not familiar with.
Okay.
And so if you do have an addiction, whether it's a disease or not, who cares what you call it, right?
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm asking you.
No, to me, that makes more sense. When I say disease, it doesn't make sense to me. But if I say I'm addicted to sugar or addicted to white flour and it takes me to never wanting to stop eating, then that makes more sense to me.
Well, then I'm a very practical person, and it sounds, an easier thing to kind of, I don't know what the science is about food addiction. I think it's pretty clear that it's parallel to the alcohol and drug addiction, but it doesn't matter what you call it. Is in fact you've identified the dynamic. When I eat this, I lose control.
Right.
Oh, all right. Well, then exercise control. Well, that's a problem too.
Exactly.
All right. All right. So what is your sense of and experience with the solution?
So well, number 3 was what behavior is manifested?
Okay, that's a different line of thinking, but go ahead with that. Yeah.
Okay. So the behavior that's manifested is my control, wanting what I want. Don't measure your food, change your food, eat something sugar-free. I have a feeling, and instead of dealing with the feeling, I want to numb out with food. So that's my behavior.
All right. All right. Yeah. And
okay. And then the opposite of the fear, name the opposite of the fear. The opposite of the fear would be to have faith, to surrender, to let somebody else guide me, to trust someone else to guide me, to take their suggestions and dive into the program 100%.
okay.
Not
right.
1 foot in and 1 foot out.
All right. And so let's explore that a bit. Have you tried that, taking direction and being 100% in?
Recently, yes.
And how's that working?
Absolutely wonderful.
So what's your question?
My fear is that I'm going to quit, that I'm not going to keep doing it.
Have you done it in the past with success and then stopped?
Yes.
So the fear is legitimate.
Yes.
All right. So staying with the worksheet, then what would be the virtue that would allow you to deal with the fear?
Well, I put to call in my food, write down my food. And my biggest hang up is call people for help, because you see, I can do it all by myself. Ask God for help, pray. And then what I got when I wrote those things down, what I realized was if I really did dive in 100%, I could get rid of all the negative self-talk in my head and start liking myself. I could actually feel a part of something instead of feeling separate. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it felt.
No, you don't have to. I think we all know what you mean. Absolutely. I mean, yes, I agree. Again, my question, have you had the experience of having the relief from the negative self-talk for any period of time?
Yes.
And what did you do to have that experience?
I prayed. I did affirmations.
Okay.
I memorized scriptures. I meditated. I journal wrote. I had to take some action to get rid of the negative is so easy. It's just like right there all the
It's a
time.
habit. Yeah, it's a habit.
Yeah.
And you know how you get rid of habits?
Mm.
It's a scientific now confirmation with the brain studies that have been done over the last 15 years. When you behave differently, you change your brain.
Mm.
I won't go into the details of it because it's not necessary. Literally, organically, biologically, physiologically, when we change our behavior intentionally, we change our brain biologically. It takes a little while, but we create new habits and it becomes easier then because it's a habit that's wired in the brain. Now, what you said was earlier that you had a lot of success when you asked for help and when you listened and took direction.
Correct.
Is that, I mean, did I hear that correctly?
That's correct.
And my sense is that's probably a challenge for you.
I seem to find sponsors that don't want to say do A, B, and C. They're like, I think you should just like be abstinent and then figure out the feelings when things are going on and why you don't want to be abstinent. And I want somebody just to give me a rule, but
Oh, I see. Yeah, because the advice that they were giving you was solid advice, but it wasn't per a parent dealing with a 6-year-old.
exactly.
And you want to be told what to do.
I do. And that's what
You don't want to take responsibility for what you do.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. But at the same time, you really don't want specific direction. I'm getting a sense from your words, your tone, and even the way your face expresses it, that you're a pretty independent person.
Yeah. And maybe if you tell me I might do it, I might not.
Oh, well, I think eventually you won't do it because you have a resistance to taking direction.
Exactly.
Well,
This
that's
really
what,
sucks.
huh?
I said, this really sucks because it's like a head game I play.
It is. Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, 2 or 3 times in our conversation, you've indicated success, but it was short term because you began not doing what brought you success.
Yeah. Why would I do that?
Well, that's a different question. I don't, that's a good question for
Yeah.
you.
Why would I sit? Why do, it's almost like the alcoholic, that runs in front of the bus, the train, the whatever. And I know I'm going to hurt myself, but damn it, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to wait till I hit my head against the wall and then I'm going to finally surrender.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's not about black and white. So, and at the beginning of the conversation, you said something about, I don't know, doing it perfectly or doing it well, or so, there was some word that you used that gave me the sense that you were looking for something that's just not available to us as human beings. You're going to, we get a B in life, not an A. And B's really good. We do the best we can, knowing that we're not going to do the best we can and doing it anyway.
In school, I always strived for an A, but I always got B's.
Yeah.
And I think just the acceptance of the B is okay.
Well, at least you want it to be.
Right.
Right now, you feel it's selling out.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
I'm not telling you to compromise your program or
Oh.
your values at all.
No.
But at the same time, I am suggesting that you say, well, maybe my definition of reality needs just a little fine tuning. And that's where having a wisdom person as a sounding board is really helpful. Maybe there's somebody in between what you just indicated as somebody that you found. Most of the people you said are generic, sort of giving you directions. What you want is something specific. I don't think that's healthy. I don't believe the role of a sponsor is to tell us how to specifically manage our lives. I think that's a control issue that's very unhealthy and eventually would rebel. You would specifically rebel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But helping us identify principles. That's my challenge to the people I work with individually is identify the principle so that you have some guide rails to your behavior. I never tell anybody what to do. I share my experience. I share some of the things that have worked or haven't worked for me or other people I've talked to, but I never tell people what to do.
Right.
Because it's their responsibility to think it through and then make their own mistakes and learn from them. That's why I kept asking you, so did you have success? And then, all right, then the question you asked is a really good question is, well, then why do I stop doing what gave me success? I don't know the answer to that question, but it's the right question.
Exactly. I need to look at that.
Yeah, in prayer, in meditation, in conversation with experienced people. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. We have to define what works for us, be very practical, what does work for us, and be very honest with ourselves, what doesn't work, short term and long term. Of course, the long term, much better perspective. And the worksheet will probably be a real benefit to you, and just be specific and play with it. And use your creativity. These are not formulas. None of the work I ever do is meant to be a formula. 1 + 1 = 2. It's directional, right? But treat it like make it personal. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So let's pray the serenity prayer for the balance of tonight. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.